We have a new Air Force secretary who's a former vice president of engineering at Raytheon, speaking of these conflicts of interest, to coin a phrase, who came out and gave a speech recently. His name is Frank Kendall, gave a speech at the Air Force Association's Airspace and Cyber Conference. He mentioned China 27 times. This is a report by Dave DeCamp at antiwar.com. Air Force Secretary says his priorities are China, China, China. And he says in the speech, "So what are my intentions now that I have this job? At a breakfast on Capitol Hill shortly after I was sworn in, I was asked by Senator John Tester what my priorities were. My answer were that I had three: China, China, and China." And so he assumed office on the 28th. He says essentially he wants to modernize our weapon systems and develop weapons that will scare China. He said that previously. He's very into essentially retiring what he calls the legacy systems that we have. He says our team cannot win its one fight to deter China or Russia without the resources we need and a willingness to balance risk today to avoid much greater risk in the future. So this guy served in the Obama administration from 2011 to 2017 as the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Sustainment. He said that since 2010, he's been pounding the drum about how serious a threat China is to Washington's ability to project power in Asia. This is also, of course, as Dave points out, very similar to what we were hearing from Carlos Del Toro, who was Biden's pick to be the Navy secretary, who was saying back, I want to say in July, in his Senate confirmation hearings, he was saying things like, "I'm going to exclusively focus on China." And I remember Senator Josh Hawley asked him, "Do you think it's necessary that the Navy be able to prevent a Chinese attack on Taiwan?" And he said, "Absolutely."
Yeah.
So,
and Connor, I just want to point out, and I've said this on the show before, but I think it's so important to just say that we've now gotten to the point of absurdity on our China policy where you have to openly state your delusional paranoia about China in order to get in a top position in the U.S. government. These people aren't saying like, China is a concern and we're going to look to maintain military capabilities to confront China. They are saying they are going to exclusively focus on this, that they dream about China, that they think about China all day long, that they want to scare China, and they want to scare China because they're scared by China. And so, if we have a bunch of paranoids running our military policy, that's a recipe for absolute disaster. And again, it's not even just like it happened to be that way. It's that their paranoia is a qualification for them to have that job.
Yeah, and it's absolutely incredible. I mean, in the piece I wrote on China back last month, I quoted Daniel Davis saying, "It's crucial to understand that for China, the Taiwan issue is not merely a core interest, but an emotionally charged one. They are far more willing to pay extraordinary costs, sacrifice many men, and could risk it all to eventually compel unification with Taiwan. The issue does not directly affect our national security unless we get involved. If we eventually choose war with China over Taiwan, we will at best suffer egregious losses in ships, aircraft, and troops. In a worse case, the war could deteriorate into a nuclear exchange in which American cities are turned into nuclear wastelands, killing millions. America should never take such risks unless our security and freedom are directly threatened. Fighting China for any reason short of that would be a foolish gamble of the highest order." And so, like, when they say things like, "Oh, China is inhibiting our ability to project power in Asia," I mean, it's very interesting because it's really that, they always that meme of mask off. This great power competition is it's like the best example of that, is they're just outright saying that, like, we are the world empire. The South China Sea and the Pacific is an American lake, the Asia Pacific. And so that's the new deal now. So everybody, like, get with the program. It's remarkable to me. And we'll get into this now because, a majority of Americans now support going to war with China over Taiwan. There was a piece put out a few weeks ago from Daniel Larison at Responsible Statecraft about this, and how basically there was a poll taken by the Chicago Council of Global Affairs that found most Americans support, like I said, going to war with Taiwan if it's attacked. So since March of 2020, this support has risen 12 points to 52%. And as Daniel Larison says, this suggests that fear mongering from China hawks, the U.S. government's recent focus on China as a rival, and popular backlash against China have made the public more receptive to dangerous arguments about fighting for Taiwan than they used to be. And he says that what I thought was really interesting because there's a large gap between the views of foreign policy opinion leaders and the general public about what Washington should do in response to a Chinese attack. So among Republicans, there is much less support for sending troops, 43% than there was among Republican opinion leaders, 83%. There were also significant, he goes, albeit smaller gaps among Democrats and independents. But since then, the gap has narrowed and the public is moving to match the views of opinion leaders. And he says, when it comes to foreign policy, it's common for the public to follow elite cues, but it's still remarkable how quickly public opinion is turned on this question within a matter of months. And, I've been thinking for a while, we've covered some of and of course, our friend Pat McFarland at the Libertarian Institute has covered this as well, that there's quite a few China hawks and influential China hawks in the independent media as well. And what's interesting is, I think that as much as Americans hate I think by and large, we have super majorities in the country who want us out of the endless wars. We had a vast majority that supported withdrawing from Afghanistan, even in the face of the botched withdrawal. We have massive majorities of even troops who served in Iraq who say we should have never fought these wars. However, it's interesting to see this poll because, I think that to get people on board with these policies that are targeting China and Russia, these nuclear armed states, that this has to come from people who are at least ostensibly against those endless wars, those stupid wars, as Trump would have called them. I don't think it's an accident that this, policy escalated so much under Trump when he was ostensibly, he was kind of marketing himself disingenuously as being sort of the anti-war guy. It was easy to do that running against Hillary Clinton, or even Joe Biden for that matter. But, it's interesting. I think that I definitely think that the sort of the influence of the China hawkishness in the alternative media scene has definitely played a role in this as well.
Yeah, no, that's a great point because, there's so many Americans that are now skeptical of the mainstream media narrative, which this is, that China is bad and we have to confront China. This is, the mainstream media military industrial complex generated narrative that we're all supposed to consume. But unlike with maybe something happening in Afghanistan or even with the COVID issue, where you have the independent media and you have many of the former Trump community that are just so jaded by the mainstream media that any narrative that they come out with, they're pretty skeptical of. And yet on the China one in particular, there's, the Tim Pool types, and then there's the MAGA types that are like, yeah, I want to end the endless wars, but that's because we got to go get China. And then China, right. China. And that's literally what they say is China. That's their thing. They just think about it all the time. And man, there's a billion of those people and they got nukes, and look at all those cities and the Uyghurs and Taiwan. And there's just so many different issues to fearmonger on when it comes to China. And also, Connor, I think we do have to take into account for what, whether this is fair or not, China is probably taking a PR hit in the minds of Americans because of COVID. And, sure. I'm not trying to make a statement with that. I'm just saying that it probably contributes to the at least willingness of Americans to, say that we got to confront the Chinese Communist Party. Now,